All right, we are live. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is the Elected Officials Transportation Committee meeting for Thursday, October 5th. That's a call to order, and we'll go through roll call for attendance. Sam Rose for the City of Aspen. Sam Rose.
Here.
Ward Howenstein.
Here.
John Doyle.
Here.
Mayor Tory's here, and Bill Guth is absent today. Mayor Madsen, would you do your roll call for your ward?
Melissa Shank.
Here.
Tom Fritzstein. Believe he was trying to be, I don't think he's going to make it. Susan Merle.
Here.
Britta Gustafson.
She should be online.
I think she's
She was going to join online, maybe.
Yeah, she said she was.
okay.
Who's your Zoom moderator? I don't know, maybe.
Oh, she just, I see her now.
Oh, there she is. I'm here.
Thank you. And Francie, would you do the Pickens County Board, please?
Yes, Patty Clapper,
I'm here.
Steve Child,
Here.
Greg Postman,
Here.
and Kelly. Are you here?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Oh, hi, Kelly. And I'm Francie Jacoba, and I'm here too.
Thank you. First thing is for approval of the June 29th minutes. I assume everybody has read them in depth, and is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
It's coming.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Do we need a roll call or just an ayes?
Eyes is fine.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
There was a public comment on the.
Public comment is right now.
It's after the agenda, after the minutes.
So now it's time for public comment. Public comment, we ask that you limit it to about 3 minutes so that everybody has an equal and fair opportunity to speak today. Are there any members of the public that wish to? If you'd like to, Gail. You could have a seat right over here anywhere.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. So nice to be here in this beautiful new chambers. We're here to talk about housing. I'm Gail Schwartz, President of Habitat for Humanity, Roaring Fork Valley, resident of the Valley for 50 years, and now wanting to talk about the fact that perhaps this body could come together and start a conversation around housing. And I've been joined this afternoon by the sheriff, so.
Good afternoon, Michael Buglioni, Pickens County Sheriff. I have to stress the, I'll call it the urgency for housing for first responders here. That was part of my campaign. It's a recruitment and a retention tool. I was just sitting in office for 6 hours interviewing new candidates, and I would say 5 out of the 6 of them asked if we provide housing, and I had to answer no. So it is urgent.
And you have how many deputies, and where do they live?
Well, most of the deputies live outside the county, which is, it's not mandated they live in a county. If they can afford a house outside the county and raise their family in a home that they own, that's fine. But it does put some stress on their travel. It does put some stress on emergency response time in case we have an all-call. So I would like to see more Pickens County deputies and all first responders live within Pickens County.
So the reason I'd like to come today is just to ask you to, as a body, to entertain a concept of developing housing at the Intercept lot. And doing that in conjunction with the communities, identifying community needs, and also maintaining a transit facility there that could be a structure, that could be in combination with multifamily housing, that could serve the needs of the community. Per your latest Community Growth Advisory Committee, saying, okay, this could be a reasonable reach, and having talked to nonprofits and Snowmass, I mean, every week, every other day, I'm fielding calls from nonprofit communities, emergency services, et cetera. How can we address the housing issue? And there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of options. And I think starting to entertain some of those, a public resource at this point in time where the state has put forward state lands and the opportunity through their new P3 office, that we can bring communities together and identify opportunities for state resources. So it's a big conversation. I think everyone probably has a reason why we shouldn't do it, but I'd like to start from a place of what could we do? And what could we do on the land that's there? And as Mr. Blankenship said, make sure number one priority is a transit center. And so it's a very critical time that we look at some options for us. Obviously, the lumberyard's coming online. We have other projects being entertained. As Habitat, we're building 20 homes in Rifle. We're building 18 homes in Glenwood Springs on parcels that are donated to us. We're starting to build a modular production facility in Rifle that will be a workforce training center that could train 50 to 60 young people a year, and we could build 100 homes. This is the kind of impactful opportunities that we have before us, and I would just ask, this is a really amazing collaborative effort, and that there be a conversation entertained to explore the concept. And we're happy to support.
Thank you. Any comments or?
Yeah. Two comments. I guess I'm going to take from Holy Cross answers. Yes, the question is how do we get there? I think CDOT owns the intercept lot, so what hurdles, what mechanisms would have to be gone through to get use of that land for housing? And that's for the intercept lot. And for Michael, Sheriff, is I don't think, does Pickens County own any housing for county employees?
Yes.
How many units do you have, and how are they determined?
They are split between different programs. We have a joint equity program where we'll go in on the purchase of units. We have roughly 13 of those. We have another dozen buy-down units, and we also have, let's say, 5 or 6 units at the airport right now for airport employees.
I know the answer to this, and those are all occupied and none are available for first responders?
We don't prioritize just by first responders. We do prioritize by working with our HR department on difficult to recruit or retain, which does include first responders, but also some other positions as well. In cases like the airport, those are limited to airport employees because there is FAA funding involved in that.
And are all of your units occupied?
They are not all occupied. Some units are being in transition right now with employees, but we do get them occupied as quickly as we can.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ward. Yep.
Thanks, Michael. I just would be interested to know how far your deputies are traveling to get here.
I think the furthest one is Newcastle,
I think so.
Okay.
or,
I had heard Battlement Mesa at one point.
no,
It was
I don't think
horrifying.
we're quite that far.
Okay. That may have been
Because
why.
that creates a bigger problem, but rifle or silt,
It's still a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
it is. It is.
Thanks.
So, and again, I've obviously spoken with Mountain Rescue and other hospital, et cetera. So we all know, we could be here all day talking about what the challenges are, but I was just wanting to see if there might be an effort to start to entertain an IGA, a conversation. Happy to help bring the state in if it's helpful at some level, but this being really a new day for identifying state lands and being able to use them. They might move a little faster than the Forest Service, but I think that this is some of the interesting thing. I know you have a full packed schedule, but I have just provided some, if it's appropriate to
Gail,
hand
one
these
more
out.
question from me is just that you've chosen one site. You're here to propose one site. Are there other sites that you would like to consider other than the intercept lot?
Absolutely. And so I think that we could lay out a few options. The reason that came to mind is because of the new
State
effort
road.
on the state and the transit-oriented. We know that our working families really need to be near transit. And so we have some other concepts that we're entertaining, but that, I think in particular, having had conversations with people in Snowmass and in the Upper Valley, that it's this would be a great opportunity, potentially. So I understand. it's
Final
the
question is,
options.
would you be willing to participate or partner with Snowmass or Aspen if they were to build the
Absolutely.
places within there?
And
okay,
we
other
would be
locations?
honored to do that. Obviously, it doesn't have to be dedicated, as we've done it at Basalt Vista, where it is a combination of the school district and people working in the county. I think there's a way to prioritize certain units and, again, to serve community needs. So it's just a very, very high-level beginning, and I'm happy to help support your effort. So, or we Habitat. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
you.
and
Thank
if I might just leave this, if it would be appropriate to hand this out.
Yes.
I
Another,
thought that Aspen owned part of the intercept lot area, the unpaved section where the homeless were, isn't that Aspen?
no, we lease it,
It's all CDOT?
right?
It's all owned by CDOT, and it's through an agreement with CDOT. We manage it. The IGA
Right.
is with the entities, and City of Aspen has been managing the lot. Yeah.
And there's three parcels there, actually. Aspen, Mass was originally going to be housing. The Board of Commissioners, and we took it off because it was too far and there was no water, no sewer. And then you have, I think it's Sandetine, which is the little red house in between. So there's maybe some other opportunities that wouldn't interfere with the use of the intercept lot for parking. So that whole corridor between Smith Hill Road and Shell Bluffs might have some opportunity. We've been talking about it for 20 years, Rachel? 25?
Thanks. Other members of the public for public comment this evening? Rachel?
Great. Thank you all for your time, and thanks to Gail Schwartz for her efforts in housing in our valley. I think it's critically important. My name's Rachel Richards, for the record, and I've sat on your side of the table before, and I'm actually here as someone who helped pass the half penny back there in 1993 and served as mayor, talking to the valley about managing traffic growth through mass transit when we formed the Regional Transportation Authority and later funding campaigns for BRT and such. I am here today because I'm a little concerned with the agenda, and I have to say it's something for Snowmass, and it's not about Snowmass. I want to be clear that way. But we've all been through a lot of retreats where we talk about if you fill the glass with the sand first, you'll never get the big rocks in. And I'm a little concerned about spending the money annually on a projects list that is no longer looking at the big picture of transportation needs in the valley and how our system connects with each other. I think it's a good project. I think your housing fund or your general fund or maybe Picken County Open Space and Trails Fund should help pay for it. But when I look at the projects that the EoTC has attempted, and even what's going on with the Brush Creek Intercept lot now, that was put off for years because we didn't have enough money and we couldn't get enough free money from the government. And the project that's going on now isn't going to have flush bathrooms. Perhaps the one amenity that traveling mothers and parents and people coming up from Rifle and Silt and Newcastle would like to have when they transfer buses. And that's because we didn't have saved money. So I do think it's a good project, and this isn't personal, again. But I know that the city of Aspen is spending millions of dollars on a trail to connect the Highlands affordable housing down to Highway 82 because the school district no longer wants the trail to go through their campus because it's too dangerous. And the city of Aspen has not turned to the EoTC to help fund that trail, but it's parallel. And so I think we should bear in mind it's okay to have a savings account and to save up and perhaps really try to look hard at what the priorities are going forward And to me, that's the question of how do we get more people on the transit system? How do we get more people satisfied and happy and using the transit system? And unfortunately, this is all happening at the exact same time that RAFTA is taking public comments on service cutbacks for the BRT system for the winter season, because they don't have enough drivers or whatever. And at the same time, we're kind of lowering the speed limit in Aspen for all the buses and transportation that's not on Highway 82 from 20 miles an hour to 15 miles an hour, which has been dismissed by some as being de minimis, but it's a 25% reduction for every bus coming in and out of Snowmass with workers or with guests or skiers. Same with the BRT system and all the other systems. We're going to be a reduced speed, which again starts to kind of push drivers off a little bit. I think there's a second hearing on that yet, and you may be looking at exempting some bus routes, but it hasn't been announced publicly. We have big priorities that have come forward, like the Brush Creek intercept lot connection with the Airport Business Center. That's going to need funding. And if we look back in history over like the Glenwood Springs Bridge replacement, EoTC had to kick in hundreds of thousands of dollars for additional bus service to help mitigate the project. And any enhancements that CDOT isn't going to pay for on the Castle Creek Bridge replacement when it eventually occurs are going to be needed here from this community. So I really want to ask you to keep your eyes on the big picture. What will really get more people on the transit system in the long term? What will really help us pull down the federal grants by having enough of a matching grant? And how can we pay for the things that CDOT won't pay for? You know, Aspen has gotten a really nice repavement of some of the declining Main Street this year. I appreciate that, and every driver's alignment does. But the city had to pay for the vast majority of that project. CDOT was only able to contribute less than $300,000 to a $1.7 million project. So let's kind of keep in mind that we need that money for further things in the future. And I don't fault Snowmass at all. I realize the EoTC put out a request for, does anybody have ideas for the upcoming budget? And it was a legitimate one to throw out there. I'm not saying that. But I think the real question should be what will entice more workers to come all the way up to the Upper Valley in the future and not drop off at the great jobs coming up in Willits, not drop off at the great jobs in Glenwood Springs, because that's where they're going now. And when they're treated kind of a little disrespectfully by saying, you guys can wait in the cold, you guys can carpool or do whatever, but we're not going to enforce HOV. And if you really asked yourselves, what is the greatest obstruction to the mass transit system right now? It is not dealing with and fixing the entrance to Aspen. And I think EoTC, which signed a resolution of support of the pass system and the pass preferred alternative, honestly should be more involved in what is going to happen in the future. Because the city let a contract out on August 22nd that asked for redesign of a 3-lane bridge. And it said very specifically that the use of the 3rd lane is undetermined. Could be a reversible lane, could be general traffic. But it's not a mass transit lane, and mass transit or references with RAFTA or the EoTC were left out of that entirely. So I just encourage you to keep your eyes on the big picture and think about those bus riders, because that's the reason the whole system's in place. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
Other members of the public comment this evening? Tony?
Happy fall, everyone. You heard Gail Schwartz and Rachel Richards both talk about Aspen's #1 goal, which is mobility. And my purpose here today is I'm concerned just as Rachel is, but Rachel's a lot more eloquent than I am, and she wanted to know if you're going to focus on the big picture. And your mission statement, I can't see where one project that's in the budget is going to satisfy your mission statement, which is to reduce the number of vehicles on the road. I am a bus rider. I do the interchanges at Brush Creek. I love the new parking. It makes it safe, it won't be muddy for events, and it's filled with every event that we have between Snowmass and Aspen. And now there's actually parking spots for trailers and semis, which really makes that parking lot function. Gail talked about possibly putting housing on that site. What happens then is, just like with the lumberyard housing, you've got housing for 300 people, but there's 22,000 people coming up on the highway that are being, as Rachel brought forward, they're having a tough time getting into town, and they're going to start going to Willits. And if you go down to Willits, you'll see the amount of traffic down there. It's backed up, stoplight to stoplight. The answer, and it's something that I've talked to the elected officials before, is a sky cab. It's an aerial connection. That is the only transportation that's going to get vehicles off the road. It's something that at least our tourists love. Myself as a local resident, that I like to take the gondola. And you won't have the same housing issues that you have with RAFTA. You won't have a shortage of drivers. It's not expensive, and it's just a pittance to build it, to construct it. And I'm really dismayed because for many years now, I've been coming not only to the EOTC, but to Aspen, Snowmass, and Picken County. I don't see any movement from any elected officials. And I know I've talked about doing an initiative petitions before. Picken County allows an initiative petition, Aspen allows an initiative petition, and Snowmass allows an initiative petition. Your next meeting isn't until March. That gives 6 months to put together the petition and collect signatures to put it on a ballot. And we have to do something. And coming into Aspen, it's such a liability if you have a fire, trying to get everyone out of town. And now with the lumberyard housing going in and no way for those people to get out of there, as our sheriff has said, all it takes is one accident and the whole roadway is blocked up for hours. As you know, Michael Ferrara, one of our esteemed first responders, was killed in an accident down at Lazy Glen. That highway was closed for 5 hours, and that's down valley. Can you imagine if you're trapped in Aspen and you couldn't get out? So anyway, I know I keep saying I want to do this petition, but now that I just have come to the realization that the elected officials, that you're not taking a look at the most feasible transportation system that would honor all of our environmental goals, our mobility goals, and I don't see anything in the budget, and that's really disheartening. And then one last question is that for Snowmass, and I apologize, I haven't been up to Snowmass, but I often wonder why hundreds of cars go up Brush Creek Road to park by the recreation center and the rodeo grounds when we have the Brush Creek intercept lot and the bus system so that people can go back and forth. But thank you so much.
Tony.
I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other members of the public for public comment this evening?
There's someone online, Tori.
We have a hand up.
Cecily.
Oh, okay. Cecily, can you hear?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I cannot get my video to work in these settings, so my apologies.
It's okay. You have a lovely photo there.
Okay, great. My name is Cecily D'Angelo, and I am here today to just introduce my organization to those of you that are not aware of it. It is called Roaring Fork Safe Passages, and I started this organization to address concerns of both human and wildlife safety in the Roaring Fork Valley. Animals need infrastructure, and where it is properly built and designed, there are great success in minimizing wildlife vehicle collisions. When this became clear to me, I jumped on this effort to spearhead a valley-wide plan that is shovel-ready in reducing wildlife vehicle collisions. There are state and federal funds available for this type of mitigation, but it's going to take a strong community involvement and dedicated organization to enact real change. My organization has been accelerated under the wing of the Watershed Biodiversity Initiative, led by Director Tom Cardamone. WBI has been the acting fiscal sponsor for Roaring Fork Safe Passages, and we couldn't be luckier to have that support. We also have had crucial diverse support from, for funding from diverse groups. Aspen Ski Co-Environment Foundation gave us our initial funds. The City of Aspen Parks and Recreation, an open space program also has provided, along with many small citizen donations. I also want to acknowledge that the Pickens County Open Space has put in a lot of time with our organization, and organizations such as the Aspen Valley Land Trust have also been participating in our stakeholder calls. To date, our organization has funded a prioritization plan that is currently in draft form and will be completed by mid-November. This is a tool that will help our valley decide where to mitigate first and where wildlife vehicle collisions will be the most effective to be mitigated. We will be picking in this, selecting in this prioritization plan 3 priority segments. And once this plan is finished, I will be sending it to everyone that's in this group. Our next step for 2024 will be mitigation plans for each of those priority segments. I look forward to working with everyone in the room, and as well as CPW and CDOT, who have also been, I forgot to mention how important those stakeholders have been in this process. And the process that we have been following as an organization are the precise steps that CDOT and CPW need to become involved in a project. Yeah, again, I just look forward to working with you all in the future and wanted to introduce myself and the organization to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Cecily.
Thanks, Cecily.
Any other members of the public for public comment this evening? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the table. We have our first item on our rest of our agenda is information only, 2023 work plan updates. Did you want to touch on those at all, Linda, or just field any questions if anybody has any?
Yeah, real quick, we just have 4. Our Brush Creek Park and Ride, oh, great, here's Pete Rice, City of Aspen. I don't think we had the date for the ribbon cutting set when I met with Aspen folks, but it is going to be on the 26th. Ribbon cutting for the Brush Creek Park and Ride. We would love anybody to come that would like to be there. It's going to be mid-morning-ish. The flat project is largely done. We have 400 new parking spaces and landscaping out there. It's really nice. The photo here shows the shared use path that didn't exist before, as it goes there parallel to the bus stop route, the bus lane. Bicyclists and pedestrians had to walk across in the just in the free-for-all parking area before, and now we have that nice path. The lighting is going to be completed by probably the 1st or 2nd week in December. It's not out there right now, but it's going to be going in then. And then we did confirm, Greg, you had asked about the number of EV spaces. We've got 29 level 2, and then 5 space for 5 fast chargers. But as we said the other day, and that doesn't quite hit your 10%.
It's expandable, though. It's
Almost there.
expandable.
Yeah, it's
Right.
expandable.
Right.
So,
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, that's going to go in there.
Do you, could you just, on that one topic, 400 vehicle spaces, what usage are we seeing right now? Do you?
Well, it's kind of off-season. I would say a third of the lot maybe is full. Of course, there's a lot of, RVs and whatnot out there as well. But I haven't done a count recently. We could get that for you if you'd like.
We can do more. It's a little lighter than it normally is in most years, but it's filling up again. I think we are going to have that adjustment period here.
There's still some folks parking in the temporary part in the dirt. Not sure why, but we are going to be blocking that off
They like that.
with boulders.
Mike, can I?
I
It's kinda
almost
nasty,
pulled in
but-
there today because I liked parking over there, actually.
Why? Why do you like parking over there?
Out in
It's
the weeds.
inconspicuous.
I just want, for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to see it, I pulled in the other day and was amazed. It's beautiful. Linda, you guys, everybody that worked on it, I know it was not an easy project following the federal guidelines, but it is really a nice amenity and was really well done. And we did have an issue with trees. We had trees on order, and there's a new tree plague coming over into our county lines. So they caught it ahead of time before they ordered the trees. So we have a tree species now that will not be susceptible.
Don't plant ash trees of
Yeah.
any kind ever
ash
again.
Bug.
There's a
But,
nasty bug killing them.
Yeah, but it's beautiful, and it really is a nice amenity. Thank you.
So Linda, I know we brought it up when you came to speak to us. I know we had one letter from somebody who was confused about how do you do a drop-off? If you're taking someone to the bus, it doesn't
Right.
seem as easy or obvious as it used to be. Is that going to be easier after things are settled down?
Well, there was an area unofficially where you could drop off skis and whatnot, park your car, get your stuff, and then go to the bus stop. We had to, that part was sacrificed to make room for the shared use path across the front and to control some of the access in and out and to provide more stacking for vehicles leaving the parking lot, buses and vehicles leaving. So that whole space had to be reconfigured. It was a sacrifice of that. There is going to be a drop-off, there is a drop-off indentation now further to the north as you drive in. But it's 300 feet maybe from the bus stop. So it's a little further walk now to do that than it was before, unfortunately. But the design sort of had to fit those other things in up front.
Thanks.
Francie?
Will there ever be an opportunity to exit at the north end of the lot, or do you always have to do the whole circle around and go to the light?
Well, the exit at the north end is for the buses only. So that, we've got it gated. There's a
know, I got
road that
trapped.
does go.
I definitely got trapped.
There's a way we can get Francie out of the parking lot?
Dropped off Steve, and then I was like, how do I get out of here?
There is a reason that you don't want to do that, right? You don't want too
Yeah.
many access exits onto 82. You really want to try to minimize it all into one area. It's why in all new designs in like cities and stuff, you see them all funnel into
The
a light.
answer is no.
No.
I wish I
We
could
could,
I wish I could have seen that Francie stuck in the parking lot.
Don't go there.
Drive down the bike trail down to.
No.
Did you see me that day get caught over there?
He was
We're gonna
trying to
have
pretend he
bollards,
didn't know you.
no vehicles allowed on the bike trail.
Ward has the floor. Ward?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is, you mentioned RV. Thank you, Sam. RV parking, and I know that they've had commercial vehicles parked there in the past, and I'm wondering if that's generating revenue, if it's, what the limits are for usage for those types of vehicles.
Pete, would you like to weigh? Yes, I would.
So there has been 3 companies in the past that have used that. As Linda's kind of described previously in these meetings, they were kind of used as their storage as house cleaner building things. It totaled to about 16 spaces usually. And they would write a check, and I can't remember the exact total. It wasn't a lot of money. It came back into the E.O.T.C. But we've currently done, that's not the use of the parking lot. And so we've given them notice already, or we've made the phone calls, and we're sending them a letter that we're not going to allow that anymore.
And are the spaces that those vehicles have been occupying, would they otherwise be used by commuters?
Probably not. They're in the back usually. The 2 are definitely in the back, and then the 1 used to be over in the dirt area that's on the edge now, but with a new parking lot, you want to clean it up, you have a new parking lot.
And this is leading to we've kicked this around, as been mentioned, for years, using the intercept lot for long-term parking for people in workforce housing, for second cars, and for toys, snowmobiles, boats that would otherwise be parked on the street or in limited parking in workforce housing lots. Is that remotely a possibility at some point in the intercept lot?
I think what Linda's
Studies
requesting today is that that study is going to answer a lot of those questions on what the use of this parking facility is going to be, how you want it managed, for that type of answer. I could leave it at that, but I would say there's more to come.
Thank you.
Any other Brush Creek Park and Ride questions?
Just the one more, Brian confirmed that the infrastructure for expanding EV charging is going to be there even beyond this. I assume
Yes.
we're not gonna have to dig up any concrete to do more,
Um,
other than mounting chargers perhaps.
It would only be if so the spaces, the conduit now for the EV spaces are to service the spaces along the front of the parking lot. Like head in where the path is, looking at the RAFTA station. If we were to add more, we'd have to locate them in different parts of the parking lot. So there would probably have to be some remediation there.
Got it, but it'll be a
But-
while, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's just where we're putting them for now.
The reason I ask is that the numbers that I read most recently were that we're expecting a 900% increase in EVs by 2030. That's 6.5 years. So we're at 94,000 EVs in the state of Colorado right now. I think they're anticipating 940,000 by 2030. So it's a pretty huge increase. And I just want to make sure that we're not having to go back and dig things up again to make room for them.
It's a
Thanks.
lot of batteries.
And I thought your factoid you had the other day was interesting, that Boulder County and Pitkin County are the two highest
They're the two
EV
top adopters of electric vehicles, yeah.
adopters in the state.
And that'll probably continue, yeah.
A lot of single occupancy vehicles.
Welcome to America.
There's that.
So, Pete, let me ask you, we're talking just specifically about the Brush Creek Park and Ride right now, but given the growth of this segment, are we planning for that adequately?
There's the city of Aspen has a master plan that you've been through that process.
Right.
It's moving pretty quickly. I would say that we're constantly relooking at that as a city, as staff, because the level of chargers are changing quickly, of what they can do and their possibilities. I would say, though, that we have a pretty good plan internally. I think the Brush Creek has a pretty good plan, but it is, as you alluded to, people are really jumping onto electric vehicles, and that demand is going to be pretty high.
Yeah. And I've seen some of those effects out in California and such, having a real hard time keeping the infrastructure up and working, much less increasing.
I mean, the one thing,
Yeah.
Tori, that's the hardest for the city of Aspen is the electrical power itself. Like, we've really got to dial that in for the places that people want to be. And so it's a considerable load if everybody's coming into certain areas. And as you know, the utilities department's developed a master plan essentially to provide that power for a lot of this, right?
Thank you. Any other Brush Creek Park and Ride? Yes?
Have you done that assessment for the Brush Creek Park and Ride?
What specifically?
Related to the electrical load that the Park and Ride might?
Well, we're working with Holy Cross on all the specs of what we're going to need for at least our initial installation of EV chargers. I guess I naively am assuming that Holy Cross is going to tell us what we need and help us get it in the ground.
Holy Cross in the original, this is several years ago, was interested in placing more. And so they really want to utilize this location as a spot, and I think it's going to be a priority of theirs in the future. And so that we didn't have any power, like when this project first started to develop, that wasn't a heavy consideration, so I don't think that would be a limiting factor. factor in this
And
area.
I'm just wondering, for the nexus to transit, do we have some requirement where you're using transit when you're using these chargers? Because otherwise, it seems a little fudgy with the funding.
We don't at the moment, but this parking monitoring and analysis and management study that we want to do in 2024, that could certainly be an element of it. It's really going to be, the way we've talked about this study is all the conversations around all the potential needs out there, RV parking, events, this could become part of that discussion. There's just a lot of things going on or could be going on at that lot that we want to get our heads around and get all of those issues out on the table and figure out what is the best use of that property out there. You know, all the goals that the community has. So I don't see why we couldn't add that into it.
Yes, Francie.
It seems like the dirt parking lot there would be a place for Holy Cross to put solar because charging is done there mostly in the daytime. So, you know, it wouldn't be a big drain on batteries. And then Kelly, I'm wondering, so if you park there to charge your car, where are you gonna go if you don't ride transit? Maybe bike, but,
Food truck.
you know, it seems like.
Food truck.
Have somebody pick you up.
His food truck.
The food truck. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
The
It
next
seems-
career
Yeah,
path.
I just don't know if that's
Bikes
obvious.
maybe, biking maybe would be one.
We have talked about that it could become taken advantage of by folks parking their private vehicles there and charging them. But it's going to be, I think it is going to be, the original idea was to have it be free, but, you know, any of those questions could come up in the study, I think. I mean,
For the charging station?
yeah.
There is a cost to it. They do come in, and there is a fee to it. But it's not, just being transparent, it's not covering the cost right now on our end when we've
Where does
assessed
the
it.
money go to?
Well, this one right now is City of Aspen, and I don't think we've set up the second one yet, but I imagine it's gonna go to EoTC. So you have to go through the permit, and I don't think we're there yet.
Holy Cross is a partner with us on this federal grant. So we're not moving forward with them on this without them involved, so. And everything, the technology and everything is changing so fast and evolving that what we're talking about now could not be relevant in a year. I mean.
Patty?
Yeah, this is a wild hair, but for your study, I was just talking to someone, I brought it up with the board the other day, about, it's kind of like valet parking for electric chargers, so that people don't just park there in the morning and their car sits there all day and everybody else is lined up behind them. And it's at DIA, there's a parking lot, you call ahead, you pay for it, but you have like valet, you leave your keys and they move your car. I don't know if that's possible where we are, if we could have a lockbox system or something, somebody could come out once. But just something you could maybe bring into this study as a consideration, because that's where we get backlogged. If you only have 6 spaces and it's the first 6 guys going to work at 6 in the morning and everybody else gets there to charge, and they're out of luck. So, and I think we're finding that throughout the city at any of the charging points.
That's a really good point.
Just a thought, if maybe you could just look at it when you're doing your study.
One of the consultants that I spoke with at a TDM conference about this very problem works with a lot of West Coast cities that are dealing with huge homeless populations where they are activating big regional park and ride now that a lot of people are not, they're working from home, they're working remotely. A lot of these big parking lots are empty or not as full. So they're dealing with all of these issues, EV, homeless, worker housing, all of these things in regional parking lots.
Right, I was just
So-
interviewed by the Colorado Sun earlier this week about that same issue, what other communities are doing for RV housing, since we don't have an RV park here in Pickens County. So there was a big
Yeah.
article in the Colorado
Parking
Sun.
lots not just for parking cars anymore.
No, it's for multi-purpose use and food
Multi-purpose.
trucks.
Right.
Yeah, I'd like, as these EVs come online, I think that they should at least pay for the cost of the electricity that they're they're getting. I think when we started in the city, it was free, and now you have to pay for it. And I think we're past the point of trying to encourage you to get people with EVs, but they should also pay for their propulsion energy.
Buttermilk, you have to pay. You have to pay at Buttermilk to charge, right, Greg?
If, at 10 cents a kilowatt hour, it's $1.40, the equivalent of a gallon of gas is $1.40 for electric, so it's a steal. They should pay.
Particularly if we're trying to discourage single occupant vehicle use. We shouldn't make it free, but that's another discussion for another time. Anything to add there?
Put that item in the parking lot.
Okay. We wanted to give a brief update on our permanent vehicle counter pilot project that we have going out there. The photo on the left shows, this is facing down valley, and this is right at the entrance to the lumberyard area. The two towers that you see, the one on the left with the solar panel is our Recor, this one company that we're working with now on the pilot. They came and set that up for us, no charge. We're just seeing if we like it. The other tower is for another technology partner that we're also going to bring in. So that's what it looks like. This is an example on the left. This is just a report. This is what our dashboard from that technology is going to look like. It shows just our one counter right there on the map. And I ordered a report on Monday, August 22nd from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the dashboard's going to show us what this technology is delivering. On the right-hand side, this is a chart of the different classes of vehicles that the AI function of this technology can show us. So I ordered up a report for seven different classifications of vehicles. This is what they are. This is FHWA's, how they describe different vehicles. Number 1 is motorcycles. Number 2 is passenger vehicles. The group 3 is pickup trucks, and we can even dial that in even better with this technology so that it could show just a typical truck like, the trade parade might drive. And then class 4 is buses.
I like the double-decker. We're now in England.
Yes, well, that's wrapped up. And then other types of vehicles would be a big panel van, or maybe one of the corporate transportation vehicles, or we could look at a pickup truck carrying a landscape trailer, or you can really dial down what you want to see. Here's just an example of that August 21st data. Motorcycles there on the left.
This is, just for clarity, this is traffic traveling up valley, both ways, what?
So for our trial with this company, this is the bargain basement technology just for the trial, because we haven't paid them any money yet. They came up here from Texas, installed it for us. This is getting both directions right now. But in the future, when we have this on board or a similar technology, we could ask for only up valley, only down valley, by hour, by quarter hour. We can ask it to do whatever we want. But this is just the screenshot we have now for this is the cheap version. So that second bar, at roughly 60% is passenger vehicles. The 30% of the vehicles coming through are pickup trucks. That could be somebody, it could be a trade parade, it could be, it could be a service vehicle, or it could be someone using a pickup for their passenger car.
What's a trade parade?
Just what it sounds like.
Not everybody knew that.
The commuters, any tradesmen that are using vehicles.
Trade parade.
Trade parade.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I thought,
That's the first time I've heard that too.
I took that from somebody else who, I think
It's the plumbers, the electricians, and they have banners that say, "I'm the plumber of the day," and.
It's a pickup truck, so it's a lot of, our workers going up to do remodels and construction vehicles and whatnot.
Right.
That's what that class is, 30%.
And what's the period of time? Was this How many days? How many
This
hours?
was on a Monday, August 21st, 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., both directions.
300 motorcycles, 150 motorcycles went by.
Well, in August, you know, there are
That's
tourists
amazing.
and
Maybe
whatnot.
tourists.
A
Yeah,
lot of motorcycles in town this year.
yeah, a lot.
Would it pick up bicycles the same
Well,
way?
but it could be 75. They could have
Back and forth.
come up and then gone back.
Right, like I said, when we are actually
Sounds like a
paying
lot.
these folks, we'll get better detail.
Right, got it. And can you describe the equipment? It's a camera on top of a pole?
It's a
or is it-
camera on top of a pole, and then there's a box and the camera is just taking the video. And then below it, in the control box, is an AI unit that's translating all of that visual data into this.
Got it.
And then this is a dashboard that anybody who gets access or wants access, all of us or any of y'all, if you wanted it, could go in and look at it at any time and just order up any report.
Is there a privacy issue?
No.
I'm just wondering, I mean, we might have people in this community who would make a bet.
As far as the privacy issue, we've kind of gone down that path already. We have
Yeah.
license plate recognitions, we have cameras. We're past that point of like that being the piece.
There's no
I'm
privacy.
sure, yeah, I mean,
I know
I would say that if you're
on
driving on a
I-70 they
public
do it, yeah,
highway.
but,
Be careful who you ride with.
no, but they've been able to find people like kidnapping and because they are able to track it through these systems, so there's that other beneficial use, which I would call beneficial.
Which is the bus category?
It's the next one, that little bitty one, it's at
586,
3%,
Group 4.
536. That's the buses.
This system could also weed out the trucks headed for Independence Pass that are longer than 35 feet.
I think it can do a lot of things. It's AI.
Some of them don't, they turn around in town.
18-wheelers?
Where are we in this project? So they've done an install of this. When are we ramping it up? When are we gonna pay them? When?
So
What-
it's in our 2024 work plan that the 7 locations are all going to be installed by the spring. We really like this technology, but we are looking at one other package.
Okay,
And
so this is in test phase.
this is a test phase.
Okay,
We wanted to see just, if we liked it, if it got the information we wanted, just all of those things. So they're pretty excited to come up here and work with us, but, we're going to look at the other one too, the other company. We interviewed total about half a dozen different providers, technology providers for this.
Francie and then Kelly.
So I thought that the counters that we had at Castle Creek Bridge said that we had 12,000 users a day going over it fairly recently. So are we assuming then that a lot of those people, that's just one direction, a lot of those people turn off between there and the lumberyard? Because this is a much lower count than that 12,000 one way.
What's the time period?
This is 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. and it's before buttermilk and all of that. So it's
Right.
before a lot of land
Yeah,
uses
right,
that.
before a lot of
feed
turnoffs.
into that, but I'll let.
Ours is a
talk about that
24-hour counter, and it counts trips, and so that looks a little differently. So when I dive into the data, we can wow you at
Okay.
a later time.
So will we get
This is the
24
engineer's
hours
area,
at some
not the
point?
planner area.
6 to 5, seems funny to cut it off at
She
5
just did,
o'clock.
she just pulled that for this.
Yeah, this is
You
just.
can do whatever.
So do you have a whole 24 hour, is it getting 24 hours?
We can ask it to do whatever we want.
Okay, thank you.
This is just
We just don't get, we
just
don't
an
get
example.
Cemetery Lane and.
Just an example.
an example.
Free test sample.
So I can
Yes.
fit it on the screen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Before you buy the whole box, you
Yeah.
can try one. I think, just judging around the table, there's a lot of questions about this going forward. So you're still in test phase, so we should all just relax a little bit.
Should I hold my questions?
Till March.
I mean, not if they're important
I
to
guess I
you.
would say, are we going to be able to assess Like truly separate out the down valley traffic that's coming in. Like if our demarcation is Brush Creek, right, that's sort of as far, or McLean Flats, you know, will that give us a clear enough picture of people traveling all the way from Glenwood all the way up through? Because I think that's important. It's important for us to be able to assess our other mitigation strategies. Like, we want to be able to subtract out how many people we took off the road from way down there by using these counters to assess if our mitigation strategies are effective or not. So that would be, for me, really important. And if we need when we're approving the work plan to make it expansive enough to do that, we need to know that, I think, today.
So
The location.
this project, when it was originally brought to y'all in 2022,
After Brush Creek.
we had, I think, just the 6 locations. And those are Brush Creek Road, the ABC, this one, Owl Creek Road, Power Plant Road, Castle Creek Bridge, McLean Flats, and then we added Maroon Creek Road also, so that we could look at the counts coming out of the ski hills and the school complex and all of that happening. The original budget for it, it looks like if we stick with this company, we could probably add some locations. So there's some flexibility there. Traffic coming, we wouldn't know, I mean, it's only gonna hit our gates. So how many of those people came from just Basalt or just Garfield County or beyond that? This isn't going to tell us where they came from.
But RAFTA does have that information. They did, I think it was connected to phones. So they have information for people coming through Glenwood and how far up valley those cars go. So they can count how many people came from east, how many people came from west, what percent turned it off at Carbondale. It's a pretty cool study. It's just last year. What?
That was street light. Do you want to talk about
Glenwood did
that?
street light, and they've used air sage. I will say, the exciting part about this is gonna be a lot more accurate. Sage and those other ones have some limits in
I
this.
just wonder, like, Snowmass Canyon, you know, like everyone who's in that funnel, you know, it's gonna be a finite number that's gonna help before it starts to all chip off in the upper valley. We don't need to dive into that now, but I just would ask that this be expansive, whatever we approve in the work plan is expansive enough that we can figure out how to answer that question and have dedicated the resources to answer that question. Is that fair? That makes
Yes.
sense? Okay.
There is a belief with some traffic and transportation planners that street light and air sage are 2 brands of that cell phone data technology, that it's not necessarily that reliable in small population centers like ours. But it does give you some parameters. We do know that all the traffic coming through Glenwood, if you just look at it coming from West Garfield County into Glenwood, only 30% of it comes all the way to Aspen. But that's when we measure from that far away. I don't know if we've broken down how many people from Carbondale are coming all the way from Aspen, or Basalt coming all the way to Aspen. Don't know. Do you know?
I would just say that if that's something you want to pursue, we can come back. Let us get to the point where we're comfortable with where we are with the technology, and then we can open up those conversations if that's a direction that this group would like to go, because it's important. I understand what you're saying, but I think that would be probably a later date to get that direction. I want to assure that this works.
Yeah, it's neat that you can collect this data, but I want to know how we're going to utilize it. What do we learn from it? How do we apply this? That's the question in my mind. Are we getting the data for long enough spaces to see if we're not seeing if we're getting people out of cars at the intercept lot. We're seeing traffic that's inside the intercept lot. So having data is one thing, but being able to put it to use is another.
And that's similar to what Kelly's talking about. So
But this data is going to help you make decisions, right, Marion? when you gather this data, like, then you can pick out spots, right, of like, oh, look at the usage over here. Why is there so little usage over here? And you can balance out where your needs are.
Jen, do you know how to close those blinds?
I know, it's really.
Looking at Pete, he's backlit and it's killing me.
I thought it was just me. You
Man,
kept giving me the
I'm
stink
like,
eye.
yeah.
We're about to.
Like, am I saying something wrong?
Your silhouette is burned into my retina right now.
Making him cry.
Scary.
Thanks, Scott.
It's a terrible problem
Okay,
we have on a Sunday.
hey, I think what's important here is the questions that are just coming up, right? We're all on board with learning more about our transit patterns. And so we're excited, but we want to make sure that what we're getting is helpful to what we want to know and how we're going to apply it. Steve?
There are two pieces of information that could be useful. I don't know if this has the capability of doing it, but one would be the number of single passenger cars. If they can detect more than one person in there, then that would just be a multi-passenger car. The other would be the average speed limit in real time, like going across the Castle Creek Bridge. If everybody's going 3 miles an hour, and other places, they're going 20 miles an hour. That kind of information could be useful for trying to redirect the flow of traffic or solve bottlenecks or that sort of thing.
Down all those other ways we haven't gotten into Aspen.
This can do speeds, definitely do speeds.
Do you,
See how many people are gonna
do you
go
want to share information about this with us?
Would you like an info memo?
An info
of some sort?
memo
Give you the details.
about who they are, what it does, what's their website, so everybody here can go look on and see what we're doing or whatever. Again, this is just another example. There's a lot of questions. We want this data, but we want to know what data we can get and how we're going to use it.
And do they have any consultants that help you interpret data or anything like that?
Yes. They have all kinds of help, and I could do a memo to you all about it. We're also planning for, I think, the March meeting to have a bigger presentation on this. I don't have my.
June meeting is a permanent vehicle.
All right, I want to move us through the agenda, so let's get off of this topic. The last thing that I will say, though, is just for City of Aspen stuff, wondering how this plays into some of the studies that we're trying to do to learn about traffic and transit as well. We have a lot of studies that we're doing. E.O.T.C is doing this kind of, we need to make sure that we're coordinating effort, not doing redundant work and not spending dollars on the same thing.
Well, we are contributing to this project.
I understand, but we have, the City of Aspen has some other projects that we are doing that if there's overlap, let's be efficient about it, is all I was gonna say. All right, let's keep moving on, though.
Okay. And then this is just showing the traffic movements over time. So just another example of what we can look at.
Right, so that is broken down into the different classifications, and it basically takes them through your time period to tell you your trade parade.
Trade parade.
Yeah,
I didn't make that
mine
up,
Mine
really.
didn't even rhyme.
We're close.
Right, can see that because of the peaks with different types of vehicles. This looks pretty
Hey, John.
Yeah.
homogeneous. All right,
Okay, now it's your turn, Pete. Update on Aspen transportation projects.
Okay, we're going to go through this real quick. The bridge project, we are assessing the existing bridge, and what we're analyzing with that is the true rating and structural capabilities in a really detailed report. We're looking at what it means to do revisions to the record of decision, and some S-curve work and things like that. So it's kind of stepping back a little bit and reviewing some of the options of phasing, what does it mean to do construction on the bridge, and some of those impacts. The second big project that we have is, so that's the infrastructure side of what we're doing. The programmatic side of it now is trying to help the parking and transportation and improve those systems as a traffic demand measure. So that includes a lot of things in the transit. It's encompassing all the changes from 2020. Essentially, COVID has changed the workforce, it's changed the ridership patterns, it's obviously, there's some shortages, and how do we handle those shortages? And how do we better utilize the parking management as far as a traffic demand measure while maintaining that kind of friendly flow into Aspen? That's my 30-second update on those.
Any questions around what we're doing?
You're kidding, right?
I do. I guess I wonder, you know, I feel like this group, we have so much opportunity, and I'd love for us to like harness all this brain power and energy and community connection. And I'm wondering what the EOTC's role in the entrance to Aspen solution should be and could be, you know, and I can talk more about this in terms of like future work plan when we get to that, but it just seems like a glaring omission from how our group is operating. And so I look to the city because it's, you know, it would be helpful to really understand, like, what is this board's role in all of that? Maybe we can parking lot that, but I can't help but like hear updates on studies and planning and monitoring and that affect just the whole corridor and an obligation as an elected and the adjacent, you know, jurisdiction to be part of the solutions.
You're not adjacent, you're encompassing. We are in Pitkin County. I would say this, you know, this board, the EOTC, I don't think has a function, but Pitkin County Commissioners as a board has a function, and Snowmass Village would have a function, and that would be to give us your input, let us know what you think. We can figure out if there's a role for you. I mean, right now, you know, there's obviously a role for you. This is a state highway that travels the length of our county. So, yeah, your input and your thoughts are more than welcome. More than welcome.
Where?
Board.
Yeah, in response to Kelly, I think, I mean, some of these traffic analysis, EOTC could have impact, and particularly if you figure out where the people are coming from that are coming into Aspen. But we know how many people are coming in, and if there's a function that EOTC can have to help fund some of those studies, you know, if we put it in the parking lot, maybe it should be short-term parking lot. If there is a role for EOTC to play, I would be interested in, you know, seeing if there's an opportunity.
Your input, if, you know, for the BOCC, I would say if you guys talk about it and you come to a board agreement on input that you want to share it, that's how I would do it, so, and just send it to us.
John, can we fit that into our agenda?
At the board's direction, we'll figure it out. It's going to be pretty tight before the end of the year.
It would be really nice to look at this as a comprehensive situation that probably stretches from, you know, Galena Street to the north end of the runway on the airport. You know, we have a traffic problem that stretches at various times a day from the north end of the runway at times when it's really bad, all the way into town as far as Galena is where things start breaking up, past Mill Street. So the frustration is that it feels like we're taking it in bits and pieces when we ought to be looking at a bigger comprehensive plan, which is a scary thought, but I think I would welcome it and have been encouraging that. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all are aware of the literal pinch points, right? Our highway, our 2-lane highway coming in goes to 1 lane, like 3 different places. It's 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag.
Yep. And then you had some stoplights,
So,
and more stoplights.
so, you know, when we talk about the bus lanes, that aren't available to general traffic. We support that, right? But that's kind of a values trade-off that we're all making. Where does the county come in on that? It's in the county. Some of the pinch points are in the county. You know, so we have agreements with CDOT. We'd have to petition them for any changes. That's why we're going through the process that we're going through, because the bus lanes, for example, and other improvements that we've already made were part of the record of decision. So if we want to do any changes to some of that stuff, we'd have to open the record of decision, which is why we're going through the process that we're going through. I want to clear up one thing that was said here is Rachel alluded to us asking for design on a 3-lane bridge. That's not exactly what we're doing. We are evaluating the current bridge because we realize that its lifespan is getting shorter, and it may be shorter than we even thought. So we want to make sure where's the status of that bridge. In that, we have said that if we were to rebuild that bridge, is there a possibility of 3 lanes? Because we don't know what's going to take place as far as the preferred alternative or a new Castle Creek Bridge. We don't know what the timeline for that is either. So we're looking at our current bridge, but it's mostly out of a safety and unweight restricted capacity. That's really what we're doing. We're not trying to redesign the bridge at this time. We would love to be, talking about the highway entrance to Aspen all the way out to the airport. We agree. We actually, and I say we, I would say, and you guys that have been here, as long as the votes have been going on, the city of Aspen residents have talked for years about this all the way to Brush Creek. We look at that as an opportunity for reducing some of our traffic that gets into Aspen, and that's for the benefit of all of us. So, yeah, we're happy to. The airport redesign and how that could maybe impact. You alluded to another traffic light that may be put on the highway out there. If there was a design that worked for airport redesign that made that not necessary, or eliminate one or something like that, we're all ears.
Eliminate 2.
We'd love it.
I guess I would just say that, like, my request would be, let's make space in the work plan to identify the scope. Identify the scope of where the EOTC is appropriate to weigh in on decision points that the city is contemplating, and to bust open the conversation to be the whole corridor, and to figure out where do we contribute those solutions, and like what falls into EOTC scope, what falls into Pickens County scope, what falls into City of Aspen scope, what falls into CDOT. I feel like that we are not addressing the biggest problem, which is we're not putting enough people on transit to solve the traffic problem. And, so I would request that when we get to the proposals for the work plan, to add that.
We'll talk about it then. John?
I think you should just annex the airport into the city, and we'll give you that too.
If we had the capacity for it, we would do it too, but we don't. We do not need that. Thank you, though. Thanks for thinking of us.
I was thinking of you.
Yeah, Christmas is coming, Patty. John?
I think since we're talking about what we can do together as an EOTC board, I personally would like to see us maybe approach the state, and I brought this up at the Three Rivers Mobility Study. Our state is spending billions of dollars on chargers, EV chargers, and rebates for EVs, and I just see it as more single occupancy vehicles on our roads, and the need for more lanes for these new vehicles that are coming. And how many billions of dollars are being spent on public transit? We have to get people out of their cars, and I'm one of the guilty ones. anyway, again, I would like to see our board approach the state and look at how do we increase our public transit. Thanks.
Especially in light of the fact we're cutting back on our transit this winter because we don't have bus drivers. So
Yeah.
here we want to increase it, but we can't even maintain the status we
I
already have.
volunteered. We thank you. I'm gonna get my CD out, but I don't think they'll hire me.
We need housing to have bus drivers.
Okay, I made a note here for further discussion, future discussion, and we'll revisit that with Linda. All right, let's move on our agenda if there's no other comments.
Oh, there was your slide, Pete. So before, just real quick on the HOV Lane Enforcement update. Had a meeting with CDOT about that. There are some wrinkles in us pursuing any sort of enforcement of the HOV lane. Number one, y'all have heard our attorney made a judgment that it's not necessarily appropriate for EoTC staff to work on it. But the other wrinkle is that CDOT feels that if Pitkin County and this group wants to look at getting rid of the HOV lane, they will revisit the record of decision that put the HOV lane in when the highway was widened, but that there has to be some sort of letter with consensus from all parties, including RAFTA's leadership. The other wrinkle is that since our HOV lane went in, Colorado passed a new law that says you can't hang out in a passing lane. That if you get in a passing lane, you gotta get back over to the right. So there is an interpretation of that motor vehicle law that says that this HOV lane legally doesn't work. So
Great, so
that's
our
that
record of
update.
decision is illegal.
It's just, it is what it is, so.
Well, then, Kelly, there's part of your answer right there. If this board, or if our three boards feel like changes to the HOV lane should be considered, then we could work on that on a state level. You know,
Our immediate structural deficiency is we can't have a conversation in this forum about that topic. You know, so we gotta figure out how to have these conversations, you know, as the real, I mean, if this isn't a transit thing, you know, then it's not appropriate at the EOTC level, then we gotta figure out as three bodies how to come together on the conversation separately.
So to be as clear as I can from what Brian Pettit and I heard from the county attorney, is in the original legislation that, or the IGA that created EOTC, that was the language. So that I suppose could be revisited so that this could be a function of this, of at least
Or we have
my
it
staff
here
time.
and pay for you separately out of our free
It would
funds.
require either a vote or an accounting of revenues from a general revenue source to work on those issues.
Yeah.
So since we can't talk about it, can we talk about the other things on our agenda?
yes, we will. No, I was just gonna say though, it's not that we can't talk about it, it's that we can't do anything about it.
From my understanding from county leadership and our county attorney, I cannot spend the EOTC what they pay me to work on it
Right.
much.
Talk about it. Right, but we can talk about it. And the reason I say, wanted to bring that up is
Just to be
because,
off the clock while we talk about it.
right, we'll take.
I can
you
leave
out
the
walk.
room. I'm gonna get
so-
a drink.
So, because, for example, the HOV lane or the bus lanes and such, there's been, like, I'll give you one example. We've had brief conversations about hotel shuttles. So, multi-passenger vehicles being able to utilize bus lanes and the like. So, I mean, there is a transit component to this, but we can talk about it. We just can't
Well, and the
utilize our resources.
The transit lane in the record of decision that created the transit lane is that it has to be public transportation. So anybody has to be able to get on any of those vehicles, and those private buses don't qualify. Yeah.
I get it. I was using it as an example of, yes, we can talk about it. We can't utilize our resources or.
And if I could, I think we may be getting too strict with the interpretation. I think the goal of that interpretation was to say, hey, in terms of funding HOV enforcement, which was the direction that we were going, it may not be an appropriate use of EoTC funds because it's hard to have the rational nexus for a transit related cost. In terms of this body exploring policy issues, or this body exploring conversations that need to happen in order to make transportation, including transit, work, you have a lot of leeway. It's just Linda can't make a recommendation to make those expenditures, and it's probably having the conversation to look at the feasibility is perfectly appropriate. But I think what she's telling you now is our attorneys have said, probably can't spend any more time on implementation.
But topics like the entrance to Aspen that Kelly brought up are definitely transit-oriented conversations. Because
Correct.
if the transit can't get into Aspen at a reasonable rate, that's a transit issue. So
Yeah, I think the concern maybe that this body's having, and maybe the forum question is, hey, the solutions might be broader that we need to consider than just transit. And the scope of this body, the way it is constituted and the rules that it operates under are really related to transit, because that's what you can spend money on. And so, Kelly, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're like, hey, there are some broader issues that may be falling outside transit that we don't have a forum to talk about amongst these three entities, and where do we get to do that? Is that correct? Yeah. And I think that is a real issue. Yeah.
I need a clarification, and the entity that created the transit lane and its usage is, what entities were those?
The
CDOT, FHW?
CDOT, FHWA, so so I wasn't here then, and
HWA.
it was part of the,
Floridian CDOT.
well, the package of things that we call the entrance to Aspen, when the roundabout was put in, when the transit lane was put in. That was all part of that FHWA CDOT record of decision that determined that the transit lane is for public transportation vehicles only.
And we split it into two parts, the Basalt Airport down and airport up kind of area.
So,
What are you gonna do without my brain here in a couple of years, guys? I'm remembering all this wonderful data.
You can sit with Rachel.
Yeah, you can give public comment.
No, because she was also wrong about the
Rachel knows
more
everything.
Do
property.
you have another question?
well, if it's FHWA and CDOT, but it was local authorities as well, I mean, if we want to discuss how to use that those transit lanes, I thought what I heard from you is that those discussions have to be from the entities that created that transit corridor, those transit lanes, and I want to know what those entities are, so if we want to have those discussions, we'll know how we can do it.
I can find out, well, it's.
You'd start with CDOT.
Yeah,
This
CDOT.
wouldn't be a federal necessarily unless, it depends. If you wanted to keep the transit lane and maybe switch lanes of it, that's an adjustment to the record of decision, and CDOT would have to do it. If you're talking about removing the HOV lane or something like that, then you're talking about a federal document break that we'd have to get the federal group involved. But that has to be, if this is a direction you want to go, then yeah, on a policy standard, we can set that up as a different
Because the
discussion.
Clean Air Act comes in there somewhere with the mitigation.
Well, we're not, it's switched a little bit since the original, but yeah.
Steve?
We're trying to solve the nitty-gritty, hoops you have to jump through to get to a goal. I think we should be trying to set the goal. Let's try to decide what is the ideal entrance to Aspen in terms of bus lanes, car lanes, you know, rail or aerial tram or whatever. We should be deciding the big goal, and then figuring out how to get there is a whole different thing. We're trying to figure out how to get there, but we don't know where we're trying to get to right now, is what it sounds like to me.
That's really good point, Steve, really good.
Conversation for another day. Greg?
Just wanted to throw out, every time, at least annually, RAFTA talks about our rail corridor, our rail banking, and we're very meticulous and thorough about making sure the rail banked corridor from Glenwood all the way to Aspen doesn't have any transgressions or violations or, whatever you call them, so that can be maintained. Of course, people think of it as a bike path, but it was banked as a transit corridor originally. It's probably a can of worms to open it up, but as we're talking about how do we fit all this transit and all this traffic into the community, that is something that has been banked for some time in the future. That future might be closer than we think. And we haven't ever gotten to the point of talking about when would we actually do something like this. It's always been, we might need this someday. So it's possible that those conversations need to start up. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that I don't know what the volume of traffic on the highway or the volume of people commuting up into our community has to be to justify expanding the rail or the bus or transitioning to rail. Because I know John talks about rail. We have all talked about rail for 60 years. My opinion has always been that we have not had the capacity, the volume to justify rail service here, especially since it's not really connected to much regular service to anywhere else. But we don't know, I don't know what those numbers are, and it'd be good to find that out at some point. Do you need several 100,000 commuters to make it work, or do you need 5,000 more than we have presently to make something like that work? Those questions need to be asked at some point, and maybe that time is coming quickly.
I do know that the state is actively pursuing that Front Range Rail, and they're thinking heavily about the I-70 corridor because there's no good solution there yet.
Well, we all have climate action plans and commitments, and, do we align with a 42% reduction in vehicle trips? Or vehicle miles traveled? We don't need to dive into that, but when you start talking about goals, that's how you start to figure out what is the goal that we're trying to back into. We have other things that we've committed to align with.
All right, it's 5:30. We have still got to get to our budget and our work plan. This is
our work plan.
This is very obvious a front burner issue for us all, so we'll figure out how to engage EoTC at our next meeting, and I'll talk with City of Aspen about how we're going to engage with you as entities outside of this.
So process-wise, this work plan is just our inner EoTC staff recommendation based on projects we have been working on and the ones we want to move forward. But if the work plan, if you all pursuant to this discussion want something to be added to that, then would we decide that here or at a future, maybe at our next meeting? We can certainly update the work plan whenever you all see that you want to do that.
John?
I think what I'd suggest is right now, if you were to include it in the work plan, it would be to have staff explore alternatives, and that may come out of the EoTC format, but it's something that I think we could kick off here, since this is a forum that we have, to talk about this, and then we can bring back alternatives.
Alternatives to what?
Alternative, either structures or formats that we can have the broader conversations outside of transit solutions.
All right. We'll circle back at the end to figure that out. I need to chew on that for a minute.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what that means, but-
Because there were 3 conversations that were just going on. Goal setting was the last one of them. Roadway improvements and CDOT FHWA was another one. I mean, there's a lot going on there.
And I wouldn't suggest going, that's what I'm saying, I wouldn't suggest going into that level of detail versus how do you bring that all to the table? Yeah.
All right. Let's talk budget and work plan, though.
Okay, so since it is 5:30 and I went over these items with y'all at the prep meetings very quickly, we're recommending that we do this parking management monitoring and management analysis of Brush Creek Park and Ride. We also want to revisit the other 2 pieces of the FLAP grant that we couldn't get into that project because the bids were way too high. Building the restrooms and doing the bus turnaround, infrastructure. We need to go back and look at the plans and value engineer those and see if we can get cheaper bids for those 2 items. We're gonna go back to the Buttermilk Crossing, look at less expensive ways to make that feel safer after y'all agreed to not go forward with the grade separation. We're gonna finish the design on the Owl Creek, the Truscott to Owl Creek Trail, and get with the city of Aspen about when we can get that into their trails capital plan. That's gonna happen in February, working with them. And then we have a quick presentation from Snowmass on their bicycle and pedestrian route that they are requesting 50% funding from us. So Ann Martins, the Public Works Director, and Mike Horvath, who's the town engineer for Snowmass, are gonna come up and talk about that real quick.
Mike switched hats. We miss you.
I appreciate that, Ward. Miss you guys too. It's fun to be back in this room.
But we're not mad at Snowmass.
Yeah, we are.
It's just better to work for Snowmass. We thank
That's why we're not mad at you.
There's parking. Just kidding.
Oh, that
Do I have to unshare mine?
And you don't have to pay for most of it.
Yay, it worked.
We'll keep this short and sweet. Like Linda said, I'm Mike Horvath, town engineer for Snowmass Village. We also have Ann Martins, the Public Works Director with Snowmass Village. We want to thank you for the opportunity to present on the Brush Creek pedestrian improvements. Tonight, we're going to talk about kind of the project overviews, goals, description, jump into the proposed design, talk about the funding numbers, jump into next steps, schedule, and take any questions you guys have. So this is the project map and overall view. To acquaint yourselves with the map shown on the screen, it's tough with the narrative there, but the Snowmass Mall is at the bottom of the screen, which is home to the Rafta Bus Depot, the Village Shuttle Depot, as well as the transportation from the Snowmass Mall to the base village via gondola. The green line represents an 8-foot multimodal corridor that we're proposing, connecting that employee housing area. That employee housing area houses roughly 500 to 600 employees. And this pedestrian connection would connect them, create a safe pedestrian connection to the Snowmass Mall where these transit options exist and where a lot of these people work. Or get on the bus to go up and down the valley to work. Tough to see those cross sections, but there's 2 typical treatments as part of this project. The lines in red that are the lower one is covered by, oh, there you go. You can see it now, but the 2 red sections are widened roadway to create an 8-foot pedestrian space separated by bollards or other treatments. And this would create a dedicated pedestrian bike space on the outside of the curve. The green area highlighted in green would be separated by a guardrail, so Brush Creek traffic would be separated with the guardrail. You'd have your 8-foot path. Then you have a railing and a small retaining wall on the outside of that. So that obviously creates a very safe, comfortable corridor for these pedestrians. Currently, there's a 3 to 4 foot wide shoulder. It's very uncomfortable to walk on the outside of this curve or anywhere on this road. So this creates safe passage to these other transit opportunities, including RAPTA and the village shuttles. Funding numbers, total cost point is about $1.3 million. It's broken down on your screen. The town of Snowmass Village has approximately 650 proposed in its budget. We are requesting a 50-50 split, so each grouping would be responsible for $650,000. I think if this funding is not received or approved, we will need to adjust the design to match our funding of $650,000, which is a much smaller, limited project. Next steps, we are hoping to secure funding, finalize design in this fall 2023, go out to bid in the spring, and get under contract and go to construction and project closeout by fall 2024. Questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, 500 or 600 people. How do they get to the bus stop now? I don't see 500 people
I
walking.
mean, the problem that we have is that we call it Donnie White curve. It's, there's
I know Donnie White.
remember Donnie White?
Oh, God, yeah.
So that we do have a nice bike path that goes but people don't walk on it. So the idea is to put the path where people actually walk, and the problem is that people actually walk on the roadway. We expanded the roadway, we squeezed the lanes together a little bit, but now people are walking next to the guardrail, and they just don't feel safe walking there.
It's scary driving around that curve sometimes in a car.
Yeah, just ask Donnie White.
Yeah, I know.
But, so that's the idea, is we're just trying to make safe passage from employee housing where people are actually walking to actually get to the village or get to the bus stop.
So you've got a bike path already, but this is just mostly peds following the course at the side of the road.
So it goes
think I-
down below, yeah. So it goes down by Creekside, goes across the bridge. There's actually 2 bridges that'll get you over to Carriage Way, or what we call Snowmelt Road. And they get utilized, but there's just, people walk on the road as well.
So they're not using the direct route isn't across those bridges?
No.
No, that's not the direct route.
No, it's up and down terrain,
down.
and then it's also groomed, so it's not always a solid surface in the winter in those slush seasons. So the shortest, most desirable path, which is what you all know people walk, is along the road.
Oh, okay.
And so we're
I
looking
didn't know
for,
that.
and then just to clarify, it's 500 to 600 units. That's not people.
Okay. I was saying, I haven't seen 500 people walking up that road.
Said it's groomed, is snow in the winter for skiing?
Yeah,
The
the
bike
trail
path?
down below, yes.
Cross-country, yeah.
Steve?
One other factor is there are times when RAFTA does not stop going uphill when the road conditions are too icy. So if someone's at Mountain View and wants to get to the mall, they could wait for, the village shuttle will stop because they all have good change systems, but the RAFTA buses, I know of at least 2 cases where they went clear off the road, one on the Dead Man Curve and one into the Creekside parking lot, which I watched that.
You weren't driving it though, right, Steve?
So the road is icy, it's dangerous, it can be really icy and difficult for RAFTA buses to get up there, and then if you add people walking on the icy road, the need for having this separated path is totally, to me, there's no question about it, it's very important.
A quick question for Snowmass. Where's the Snowmass Small Transit Station project these days?
Oh, it's floating over here.
It's being re-envisioned.
Yeah. As we speak.
Again.
So, in our budget, we had $6 million, I believe, that was budgeted for this year, unused for that project, right? So it's still sitting in?
Yes.
Okay. This is a large request, and it's for half of the project costs. In my years sitting here, I don't think I've seen this size of a request. And so I'm just wondering, is the $6 million still sitting, waiting for the re-envisionment?
Yes.
And then this 650,000 is coming out of EOTC budget, aside from the 6 million.
Correct.
Could we not take it out of the 6 million? That would be a question.
It's a different project. So I'll speak on behalf of Sam.
If you could speak up a little.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the 6 million is a separate project. That's the re-envisionment of the mall transit station. And they're looking at 3 major areas of that mall transit area. It's improvements for access from the existing transit center for the SNOMAS shuttles, an improvement of the alignment at the mall transit where Raft is at, so allowing more buses to be in that area, and then also looking at the pedestrian access in that area. So that is a dedicated project that would stay there, and we're asking, the town's asking for this other project to improve the access for the pedestrians and bikes to go from those housing units to the regional transit hub.
You know, I remember when there was EOTC funds that were set aside for entrance to Aspen work. And I don't think that we ever used them, and I think they stayed in our budget. Anyway, this is just our budget can sustain this, I believe, but it's a large request. Kelly.
Thanks, Tori. I have some of your same concerns, but I'm curious, how is this connected, I guess, to the prior decision that we made to not run the buses? Didn't we choose to not run the buses up this way? Or was that separate?
The buses have to run this way
Okay.
because as part of the agreement with Base Village, is that the buses would go to, the Rafta buses would go to the mall first and then to the Base Village.
Okay.
And so, yes, they have to go up and then down.
Okay.
And then some of them go back around again.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
And they can't actually, Rafta buses can't actually go up carriageway as
Carriageway.
well.
Right.
They can't
Okay.
turn
They have
around
to
at
go
the
this
transit
way.
center now, I don't think.
Okay.
Or maybe yeah, they can.
Yeah, would you need permission from the EOTC to take it out of the 6 million? I'll just say, I'm not inclined
John's nodding yes.
necessarily to support this, but I would be inclined to give permission to draw it down if that is required.
I
Take that one.
Yep.
And I
Because
have
I
one
believe
more
that
question.
there was actually a legislative step that set that 6 million aside just for the transit center. Is that
So-
correct?
Yeah, so that was part of a budget appropriation that was recommended by this body and then made by the Board of County Commissioners. And so it would take a reappropriation of those funds. That can be a recommendation of this body, and then it would have to be executed through an appropriation of the board. But we couldn't take administrative direction to do that.
Which board? This board?
The Board of County Commissioners, actually, it's a county tax, and through agreement, we expend it based on the process that we go through with the EOTC. And so we would, to reappropriate the funds, go through the same process of a recommendation from the EOTC and then a reappropriation by the Board of County Commissioners. And so, yes, it can be done. It would be through our appropriations process, but it's really a conversation about the goals. You know, the board had approved these transit goals. The 600, that probably hasn't gotten cheaper in the intervening year, I'm just guessing. And so the 600,000 would take away from what SNOMAS could do with that project.
Right, and then I guess I want to think equitably, and I'm going to look at Patty as our resident historian. If EOTC has funded similar, like, trail connections like this.
No,
From
not to
the
my recollection, well,
broader
because
budget.
costs have gone up, obviously, but I really don't recall that we have, most of our trail issues come back to open space and trails or those kind of purviews rather than EOTC funds. I think this trail is appropriate because it does connect people to transit. And I think your question is if whether we could take it out of the 6 million, which could we, I'm gonna tag on to that real quick since you opened the door for me. Could we take it out of there and then with an agreement to repay it over the next X amount of years so it wasn't a one-time $650,000 hit to the EOTC overall budget? But we would put money back into your fund for your transit station that we've been funding for 20 years now, guys. I think we've had at least 5 designs. So we're hoping we can help you get through that. And I'm hoping if you do this new trail, it actually will connect to wherever you put your new transit station.
Sorry, I do have one. I don't fully understand the design. Is it separated? Is it just like, what does it look like?
Portions of it are. It is on the edge of the roadway. It'll be on the backside of, there's a bus stop right by, about where that leader is, says 8-foot multimodal corridor.
Yeah.
And then it's definitely separated through the whole curve section where there's guardrail.
I didn't know it was called the Donnie White.
And people will choose that instead of the other trail that's just further away?
The other trail is down in the valley floor.
Okay.
I almost died.
You probably drop 50 to 75 feet down and then have to come back up, and it's a groomed trail.
It's pretty steep.
Not exactly pedestrian friendly come with.
No, I know. I lost like 5 pounds knocking on doors in Snowmass Village. I get that.
I have a question about that.
I mean, the $6 million that's.
Francie has the floor.
Sorry.
So I thought that you told us, Bill and Alyssa, and that at our meeting, that the people of Snowmass thought that the transit center, as it was proposed, was too big and didn't fit in with the rest of town, and they wanted to make it less obtrusive. Is that right?
Well, I think that was some people's view. I think ultimately what it came down to was the construction schedule. You know, we're looking at like a 40-month build, and I think the people on the mall, you know, it was a real aha moment to think like, wow, we're going to be into this for the long haul. And I think ultimately that's why we didn't get the support from the Planning Commission.
That should be at office.
And I'm asking because it seems like maybe what you are going to end up doing is going to be a smaller scale, and so maybe you wouldn't have to replace the 650,000.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, when the 6 million was originally allocated, you know, however many years ago that was, you know, obviously there's cost escalations. The design was over $20 million.
Yeah.
So it's still going to be a really expensive project, whatever we come back with. But I liken this particular walkway because we're really, in 2025, we're looking at really expanding WeCycle in Snowmass, particularly with e-bikes, because we are vertically challenged. So a lot of the bike stations are going to be from our employee housing over to the mall. So I really look at this project similar to Truscott, you know, just being able to connect the dots a little bit, allowing people to move around easier.
So it could be eventually used for bikes as well.
Oh, it would be used for bikes as well.
Multimodal.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? And this is maybe Ann. With regard to the portion that we're asking for EOTC, you know, RAFTA has this first last mobility fund. Is there a reason why we aren't making a grant request to at least cover some of that so it's not all coming out of EOTC? I mean, I did bring it to council, and I'm sorry that I didn't think about it the other night. I was distracted by other things, but I feel like that might be a good way to lessen the cost on EOTC, and that does meet their needs because it's bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure is one of the things that they can use it to fund. I don't know that, you know, they are giving us 500,000, or wait, is it 1.5? I forget, for the transit. So, you know, so I don't think they're gonna wanna do 650, but if we could somehow do half of that or even, you know, quarter of that just to lessen, that might.
I think it was a timing discussion.
Yeah,
Grant opportunity.
RAFTA's budgeting process is different from everybody else's, and they will accept those grants in June. So you could apply for a first last mile grant from RAFTA in June. I don't know if anyone from RAFTA is on the call.
Dan
but
was on.
Dan was here a minute ago. He's still there.
His hand is up.
Oh, he is on.
Yeah,
So is David's.
yeah. Let's go through a couple folks and then I'll come back to the table, but, let's start with Clint, actually.
Hey, folks, just to answer that last question on the grant, we are applying for a number of last grants with RAFTA. This project was not part of that request, but we are working with them to develop that grant process. As far as like other connections, I think the mayor's example of Truscott's a great one, and I think there's a number of others of connecting employee housing. The mall transit station, improved or not improved, is still, I believe it's the third busiest stop in RAFTA. Maybe it's the fourth or second, I can't remember exactly, but it's right up there. And so that's the need for this pedestrian connection, is to take out 500 units or so and have them connect to one of the busiest RAFTA stops we've got.
Thanks, Clint. David Johnson?
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. This is definitely would be worthy of a first and last mile mobility grant, and I think Linda's right. It's unfortunate that that our application cycle, we'd start taking the applications in June of 2024. But if for some reason the project is delayed, this is definitely a first and last mile mobility project.
Thank you for that. Dan Blankenship?
Hello, Mayor Tory and members of the E.O.T.C. I think that, David kind of stole my thunder a little bit. I'll talk to him about that later, but if the timing of this is something that you want to get under construction in 2024, it is, I think, possible that we might be able to make an exception with respect to you're getting an application in a little bit late. And maybe we could include it in our 2024 budget, which is going through the process. We've got the second draft coming in October and a third draft in November. So there's still a bit of time, and we have made at least one other exception in terms of allowing somebody to get an application in past the deadline.
Sounds good to me.
Tori?
Patty, and then Ward?
I'll be real quick. Yeah, I support this just for a public safety issue. And having lived out in Snowmass, that's really a hairy turn, and I can't even imagine people walking in the winter especially. But I just think we need to look at some other creative ideas as to how to fund it. I think looking at grants, there's grants all over the place right now, as we know. And if this is shovel-ready, we might be able to help you with, Northwest Cog now has a grant person involved in the organization, so that might be a good opportunity to pick his brain, John Godis from Glenwood Springs. So let's be creative, but push comes to shove, I think we need to find a way to support it and get it built.
Thanks. Ward?
Yeah, I was able to get this around my mind on the last mile, and that's been confirmed, so I feel good about that, but I think that it's needed. Finding out how to pay for it is one thing, and if I could comment, Mike, just on the design, it seems like the separation of the bollards may not be by bollards. Along that section, if there's a way to have a more permanent separation, that would be, I think that would be better, but I'm not going to sit here but I think that design-wise, that would be better for pedestrian safety.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. We've separated with the guardrail at the most dangerous point, and tried to keep those bollards just for the straightaways. And so we can certainly look at that, and like Tori's symbolizing, with that just comes money, and so we need to figure that
Another
out.
500,000 or so.
So let me try something before we go into further comment here. We could leave a placeholder in our budget, knowing that they may not need to access it all after they put in an application with RAFTA
Or other grant opportunities.
for other grant, or other grant opportunities. Is that,
Yeah, well, we've kept a placeholder for 6 million, what's?
I'm okay with that.
650,000.
okay, all right.
I just want to, so that's conditioned upon Snowmass applying for other grants to
Yeah.
cover the 600.
And
As much of it as they
Melissa knows how to
can.
get a hold of Northwest Cog's grant opportunity person.
They will
Not
do
sure what
their
his
effort to
title
cover
is.
as much as they can through other grant opportunities.
And Dan sounds pretty ready.
Yeah, that
Thanks,
sounds.
Alyssa.
Well, I mean, been sitting on the rafter board, so I might as well put it to use, right? That's why we're there.
That's right.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. We are supportive of this project, and we recognize it's a transit enhancement, so we will keep a placeholder, and you guys can see if you can find funds some other places as well.
Thank you.
Share the load.
Thank you all.
I have a quick question for the Snowmass folks.
Ask away.
How many acres of parking lots do you have along Snowmelt Road and for all the parking up there? Because just looking at that map, I realize a lot of what I'm looking at are parking lots. Just wondering how many acres there are.
I have
don't know how
no
many
idea.
acres.
I think
Clint knows.
that's
Clint-
potentially developable land for
Clint's
affordable
got the
housing.
Yeah.
answer.
Clint, do you know
we've
how
talked
many
about that.
acres of parking lots are in Snowmass?
1,000 parking spaces.
1,000.
1,000 spaces?
That is one of those lots are identified in our housing master plan. But with them comes a lot of challenging conversations because of the people that occupy the condos along Snowmelt.
Those, but the jobs are in Snowmass, aren't they? So it just seems to make so much sense.
No, it's in our housing master plan as one of the locations. It's also just very expensive as opposed, that's why we went for the draw site first. It was more bang for the buck.
So the 1,000 parking spaces are just in the village, or does that include the rodeo lot in Two Creeks?
No, that's just the numbered lots, right, Clint?
In the village.
Correct, that's just the numbered lots.
Yeah, yeah, that's just the numbered lots, so along Carriageway.
So that's got to be 10 acres.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Dan, you still have a hand up. I don't know if that's a new hand or an old hand.
He's an old hand.
I think it's old.
All right.
It is an old hand. How's that?
Thank you, sir. All right, let's keep going through.
So I think, so to clarify on that item for the budget, we are putting a placeholder for $650,000 for this project, but are going to see if we can find other grant sources
They
in
are.
2024? They are.
I'm gonna go out tomorrow and look for them.
Okay. And RAFTA's going to give us one.
I'm
They
good
just
at writing
said-
grants. That's what I do.
So it's going to be a wait and see approach to know if that 650 is definitely coming out in 2024. Okay, great. We've already talked about the permanent vehicle counters, so I think we can just move on to.
Yes.
I'm pushing a button, but it's not happening. Sorry. I think I'm starting all over with this. Pardon me. Slideshow from beginning. That work? Okay, so this is an overview of some of the costs that we have put with the projects. You all saw this in the prep meetings, and it's in your packet as well. Again, the 50 grand that is highlighted was a typo on my part. In the packet, it said it was gonna be 5, but we think it's gonna be more like 50. To take a look at those restrooms and the bus turnaround for the park and ride lot.
And was Rachel referring to that restroom project as,
Yeah.
She has always been asking for flush toilets at that parking
flush
lot.
toilets? And is that the planning that we are doing, non-flush?
No, so the original flat project was going to do the big main parking lot improvement, add restrooms, and this bus turnaround lot. When we got the bids in, the only thing we could afford with the budgeted money, which was around $8 million, was the actual parking lot improvement. The restrooms came in, that bid came in at $6 million. It was kind of ridiculous. That bid process was part of this federal project, which always inflates the cost tremendously. So what we want to do is go back, get those original plans, value engineer them, meaning that those restrooms were kind of swanky. It's got some nice flooring and some amenities in there that we can maybe pull out to make it just be some decent heated bathrooms, flush toilets. And that's what this money would do.
Great.
Just see if we could get the costs down and float it out there for a bid and see what numbers we could come up with. And then try to plan those capital improvements in 2 or 3 years out.
Where's the water gonna come from for flush toilets?
There's water out there.
There's a well.
There's a well out there, yeah.
There's just no, like, city structure water. And it'd have to be a septic system because there's no access to water and sand.
And that's more than I knew. So,
All right. Are there any questions around this?
Just call me.
Just put an asterisk next to the $650,000 for
yeah.
that project we just talked about. Everything else, permanent automated vehicle counters is anticipation of that coming back to us next year.
That money's actually was already budgeted in 2023. We just didn't, the
Right.
timeline of the project, it's pushing it into 2024. So we already have that money. Yeah.
Yes, Steve.
I had a question on the bus turnaround. Is that for like the event buses that would go down? They wouldn't go in to the usual route to turn around. Is that correct? They would go down the road where the people get their parking permits?
That's actually.
And turn around there, so then they could
Yeah.
stage there and then come back and pick up people going to events? Is that the purpose of that?
Well, I may be calling it the wrong thing. It is the entrance and the turnaround for the carpool kiosk. And then,
Carpool kiosk?
yeah, are buses going down there, Pete? I apologize for not knowing that.
It's solely for the carpool turnaround, so where the little kiosk is over there, instead of the dirt and all that, it's a block so that people can make the turn in the carpool.
So this isn't for the usual, like the down valley bus system or
This is for the carpool program.
for this, like special events, or when there's more buses that need to be staged, they can pull around, park down there and then stage and come up?
No.
No, this is not set for that purpose.
It is
It's
not a
that
bus
big.
turnaround.
It's just for
It
the
is
carpool.
a carpool kiosk loop.
Correct.
And
Well
just
done.
sort of general turning around happens back there a lot. You
Fancy
see
little
trailers
box.
come in, you see
So
rafting
it's
companies turn
commute-
around.
It's somebody dropping off their family member, they would go down there and turn around at the
Their own car.
bus turnaround,
Occupancy vehicle.
come back up and drop them off on the side, a nice drop-off point on the parking lot side of the road, is that?
They could.
They
I don't
could.
know why you would. You could just pull in and, there's better spaces, but you could.
So what would you call it? How should we amend the?
I'd have to see them.
Beat this one to death.
Well, I can tell you, is this,
Just call it a turnaround bid planning. Just take the bus
yeah,
out of
just.
it.
Take the name bus out of it, that's
The
confusing.
the reason that this
confused
is
me, so-
important is right now, people keep hitting the kiosk, that's a little chaotic back there. And so it's just to kind of help people know where to go a little bit. There isn't real great wayfinding right now because we usually set out rocks. There's a whole series of mishaps that happen out there. And so that's kind of the reason it would be nice. Is it a must?
There's
You
an
hit the big
electrical
boulders there, Fran.
Yeah.
pad, yeah. It's just to direct traffic in that back part of the lot, which is now dirt.
So maybe take out the word bus.
I'll take out
Take
the
out the
word
word
bus. I apologize.
No,
That's
that's
what it's
fine.
called in the original plans, but
Okay.
we have identified
I've got
that
about
that's
10 minutes,
incorrect.
and then I gotta
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
postpone my.
Next slide.
All right, so this is the overview of our budget.
Sorry, I need to ask a little more.
Kelly, sorry, go right ahead.
I was confused.
I guess just related to the management analysis.
Go back to that.
Is that gonna provide us with like a primer on like what the current rules are, like whatever is contracted out with whoever out there? I'm struggling a little bit with what recommendations are gonna come back to us if we haven't sort of set out what our goals for the study are. Like if it's just factual information, great, that makes sense to me. But I'm curious as to what kind of recommendations we're gonna get if like we haven't totally discussed whether we want RVs to park there or boats to park there or, things like that.
So the answer is that all of that would happen in this study. And I called it an analysis instead of a study because the word study gets kind of overused and overdone. Early on in it, there would be a conversation with the City of Aspen's been managing everything out there really well over the last many years. It's a difficult management job, and Pete can jump in and speak to that right now. There's an agreement with CDOT about what can and cannot be used out there. There's not supposed to be anybody out there longer than 24 hours. We have long-term residents out there. Some are workers, some are transients. We have, I get calls constantly from people wanting to park an RV for a week. We don't really have an RV park, an official RV park in the Upper Valley. They end up there or they end up at Buttermilk. So we want to look at the original agreement with CDOT and see how, if that continues to make sense, if we do need a place for workers to live in their vehicles, and you all as a community decide that that is something that we want and can handle, then there's technology out there to manage that,
Okay.
License
So we
plate
should
readers,
expect to see
dates.
something like, this is what's happening,
Yeah.
this is what is allowed. If you want this, we would recommend that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we just feel that there's a need that now that we've invested $8 million in fixing it up out there for matters of safety and security, and just what could it be used for? All of the transportation goals that we all have talked about tonight, is the parking lot and how we are managing it now currently meeting those? Do we need to step it up? Do we need something else to happen? We could get into this, analysis and decide what we're doing out there is just fine. But we think that we need to take a look at it.
Okay, and so we would expect that the first iteration of that analysis will come in the March meeting.
Or we could work on the RFP part of it and come back to you and put that in front of you and decide if these are the elements that we want to look at. We just, for this budget cycle, wanted to make sure we had some money in there to get some help if we needed it. Do you want to add anything to that, Pete? I'm inviting you to.
I think there's some interesting pieces. She jumped right to the most extreme. It is hard to manage the in-house out there. There's no doubt that is a really complicated piece of what's trying to happen out there that's really been difficult between the county and the city. But the things that I think are interesting is like, we have a lot of people that come in for the 4 mountain loops. We don't really have that type of parking in the city. Mm-hmm. And so is this a place where you'd rather have those vehicles, or do you want them traveling into the city? I think those are kind of the policy values that we're trying to get out of this, is how do you really want us? Like we've had, we'll allow that typically. You're out there 4 days and we know that. And there's people that are like, well, you shouldn't be doing that. It's not supposed to be overnight. So we need to understand where your values are and where you want us in the policy. And I think that's just a little example, but I think that kind of gives you an idea of what we're asking for.
I'm not sure I need to see the RFP, but, if that's gonna stall everything.
When we were getting ready for the project last year, and Pete and his staff and the county, we it was difficult to move some of the longer term residents out of there in time, and we found clusters of vehicles together sharing a generator and open gasoline, and it was just a little bit scary. So we just feel like we really need to look at
Some parameters.
what to manage, how to manage, if we need to manage all of those things.
Read the article in the Colorado Sun about RV parks and being used for their seasonal worker housing.
Yeah, I will.
It's by Tracy Ross.
You can send it to me. Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, I mean, you're calling it an analysis, but it really sounds like we need a master plan, right? So we want to be able to.
Better word.
Just heard from Gail about, potentially, emergency services out there, housing. I mean, I think there's a lot of uses, and you've addressed some of them as well. So, I think we really need a master plan to figure out what's going to be the highest and best use of that area.
And what we're allowed to use it for, because we have pretty strict requirements of what we can and can't do out there.
Right.
Which maybe, given that, CDOT is trying to find places to build housing for its
Commendable.
own employees up and down the valley, that could change as well,
Let's go to the next slide, please. We're
Okay.
6:15 right now.
All right, this is just our 5-year projected budget. Everything in orange is 2023, everything in green is 2024. In the packet, I went through what our revenues are expected to be, and then all of our project expenditures, and what our unobligated, unassigned fund balance will end up being. I can go through those now, or since y'all have already looked at it, don't have to, if there's any questions.
Is there a way we can see past the words?
Yeah, that dialogue box is kind of in the way.
Here, Francie.
I got it.
You got it.
Whatever you gotta do. A healthy fund balance
Very healthy fund balance.
and looking to grow, which makes me think that, members of this EOTC should be thinking about ways that we can utilize our dollars to enhance transit. I'll just leave it as broad as that. But we have opportunity, and we have 3 boards that are extremely motivated in this area. So I did not come to this meeting expecting so much discussion as we had tonight, which really shows that people are interested in playing a role in some transit solutions. And when you see a healthy budget like this, we should really be thinking about how we're going to do that near term and soon. And that picks up on the conversation that you're saying, Kelly. It's like we need some goal setting. We need to target some areas. We need to talk amongst ourselves where we're unified, and then start making motions toward that stuff. This is a public hearing for the EOTC 2024 budget and work plan, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the portion for public comment. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment this evening on the 2024 EOTC budget? We ask that you limit your comments to about 3 minutes, please. Tony, come on up.
Okay. That microphone is on.
Is it? For the record, my name is Toni Kronberg, and the very first transportation committee that I sat on was back in 1978. And we designed and recommended the 2-lane parkway with the divided highway. So if you want to blame anybody for that, you can go ahead and give that to myself and Stan Clausen. And we had a committee, I think, of 7 or 8 people. And I wanted to compliment all these projects that are before you, because they're finally getting to the point where they're being financially approved. And they've been out in the parking lot for a very long time. When I think about the bus lane coming into town, the slide that Linda brought forward, is that correct? There are like 500 buses coming in on a daily basis on August 20th? So you multiply.
Half of that.
So half of that, but back and forth, okay, so half of that. So 250 buses times 50 people on a bus, standing room only. Can you imagine that number of passengers in single vehicle buses? You'd never get into Aspen. And it must have been about 10 years ago that, I'm getting a cramp on my leg, I'm so sorry, that I proposed that the Brush Creek Park and Ride is really the entrance to Aspen and Snowmass. It really is. That is our entrance. And earlier that you're all discussing, and this has to do with the budget, about how can we focus on like the entrance to Aspen, getting traffic in and out. Well, in your mission statement, there goes my glasses. In your mission statement, I worked on this, it says work collectively. So that gives you the authority to work together collectively. It also says that a comprehensive, that was a word that Steve brought up, comprehensive. So 3 key words out of your vision statement. The first one is collectively, the second one is comprehensive, and I knew this one was going to come back at a future date, a decade later. It says your transportation system includes the whole Roaring Fork Valley. And the Roaring Fork Valley is Glenwood, Carbondale, Basalt, Snowmass, and Aspen. You can Google it, Roaring Fork Valley. And so that gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of looking into the future about managing traffic from Glenwood, all the worker bees coming up into Aspen. But I think that you've done an excellent job. I think that these are much needed improvements. I'm not quite sure what's going on with the Buttermilk crossing. I didn't see any explanation really in the packet as to what the budget right now, what is it, 150,000, 250,000? What that's going to be used for, if it's just for a study, or if there's going to be actual improvements.
Can I address that
Yes.
question? So we're going to look at a couple of different design treatments for that. The 250,000 was a very rough estimate of looking at, for example, a lot of feedback we got from the public when we were looking at the grade separation was the worst part of that intersection for pedestrians is people making a right-hand turn without stopping from Owl Creek Road into eastbound 82 where there is a bus lane. So people tend to treat that bus lane as an acceleration lane, and they don't stop and look and see if there's pedestrians waiting there to cross the road. So we're looking at prohibiting the right turn on red, possibly doing increased law enforcement during ski season. We would also maybe put an example is maybe a speed table across Owl Creek Road to slow cars down as they're coming across it.
That's good,
We
Linda.
could also look at.
That's
Is that enough?
Yeah, that's enough.
That sounds great.
It's exciting, so.
So it's planning and design implementation of some items.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Once Basalt put their underpass in, there's been no vehicular and pedestrian incidents, and the traffic
not.
flows.
There's been vehicular, but not vehicular pedestrian.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do we need to vote?
Are there other members of the public that wish to comment this evening on the EOTC 2024 budget and work plan? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board table.
I want to propose an amendment to the work plan based on the conversation we had related to defining scope of this board for discussion related to the entrance to Aspen, as well as identifying a forum for greater transit conversations that are outside of the EOTC budget.
So is that a budgetary impact?
The work
I don't
plan.
think so, but it would be for the work plan.
Do you need a?
It could be a budget
is that
impact if we
motion
decide
or-
to like have a retreat on the conversation or something. but-
Already, I thought we already.
A retreat? Do we need a retreat in
geez.
2024?
A retreat,
I
John?
could put that into the schedule.
Do you understand the motion?
But I don't know where it goes.
She's
Be able to
suggesting
update the
that,
Reduction will be some, but we want you to go find other grant funds too.
sorry, Clint?
And that's why, hold on a second.
All right,
Hold on,
Clint,
let me
you
find out.
gotta mute.
Clint?
Clint, we're hearing your conversation.
Hi, Clint.
Hi, Clint.
Sorry,
What are you having
folks.
for dinner?
Apologies.
Could have been worse.
Okay.
Could have been much worse.
The motion that's on the table right now is that you will look into opportunities for the EOTC to participate or,
have a conversation related to scope of how the EOTC engages on the entrance to Aspen and how we can have conversations related to budget and other policies that may be outside of the EOTC.
those two are in the motion.
And that's for the
It's
work
it's
plan,
a work
not
plan
budget.
suggestion, so I'm looking at you because, do you understand what the request is?
I do.
Okay.
So I could bring back in March, maybe after huddling up with our staff and talking about Aspen's projects, and maybe bring back maybe a memo with suggestions about how to do that.
That's fine. Yeah.
Thank
You'll
you.
just have to add language into our work
Second the
plan.
motion to make it a proper motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any?
Wait. So we are voting on the work plan, not the budget. We're voting on them separately?
No, we're gonna vote on those together. Right now, we're gonna vote on the motion for amendment to the work plan to include the two items that were in the motion. Okay, any further discussion about the motion and the second? All right, I'll do this.
Clint has his hand raised. Did he have a question?
No, he just.
Oh, he's just
Old hand.
confused?
He was waving sorry. He's holding up a sorry hand.
He wants a hall pass.
Sorry you had to hear that.
So we're going to do this by jurisdiction. Sam Rose, this is a vote on the motion.
Yes.
Ward Howenstein,
Yes.
John Doyle,
Yes.
Mayor Tory is a yes. Alyssa Schenk,
Yes.
Tom Fridstein, Britta Gustafson,
Yes.
Susan Marolt,
Yes.
Mayor Bill Madsen,
Yes.
Chair Francie,
Yes.
Steve Child,
Yes.
Patty Clapper,
Yes.
Kelly Curry,
Yes.
Greg Poshman.
Yes.
All right, so the motion passes where there will be an item in the work plan to reflect coming back with more information in that area.
So may you entertain a motion to approve the budget for Pitkin County Transit Sales and Use Tax Fund for the 2024 budget and 5-year plan?
And the work plan.
And the work plan.
I'll second.
And the work plan, as amended.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Thank you all for going through this. I appreciate it. Thank you to Snowmass Village for coming to the table with additional alternatives and some help in that area. That's great. Thank you. With that, we'll go through again. Sam Rose,
Yes.
Ward Howenstein,
Yes.
John Doyle,
Yeah.
Mayor Tory is a yes. Mayor Madsen,
Yes.
Alyssa Schenk,
Yes.
Britta Gustafson,
Yes.
Susan Marolt,
Yes.
Francie,
Yes.
Steve,
Aye.
Patty,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
and Greg.
Yes.
All right.
I move to adjourn.
No, wait, did we discuss future meeting dates? That was in here, and you know what? I'm fine with them because they're gonna change anyway, so.
Yeah, the identified next meeting is March 7th. Pitkin County will host and chair. There is an item in our agenda here for any member updates. Does anybody need 60 seconds to say anything?
No, but thank you
I'd
for the
take 30.
conversation today.
Greg wants 30.
Is Dan Blankenship still here, or is he gone?
He's on.
He's
there.
gone.
He's
Dan, I don't.
on.
He's there.
He's there.
Okay, 30 seconds is up.
30, yeah, it's my 30 seconds. Dan sent me a letter recently talking about what RAFTA critically needs to boost transit. And I don't know if you've shared that with others in any detail, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to introduce it so you could tee it up, because I think there's some emergency things that possibly could be done with appeals to people to help house transit workers. And I just thought perhaps this would be an opportunity to say something if you care to, otherwise we can do it at a later date. That was under a minute. And you can decline demur if you don't want to say anything now. But I'm just reflecting on the letter you sent.
Dan?
Well, thank you. I've had a lot of different communications with you, Greg, over the last few weeks, so I'm not exactly 100% sure which email that was, but I think it had to do with trying to get some housing for RAFTA employees who support the Upper Valley services in particular. It's
That's it.
really, it's really challenging, and you heard the sheriff also talking about the need for housing for deputies that's closer in to where the action is. And our inability to house people closer to the Aspen maintenance facility creates a host of logistical problems, particularly since we recruit a fair number of people from outside of the region, and some of them don't have automobiles. And, we're even considering running an employee shuttle or buying vehicles for vans and so forth to get people up there. And it would just make things a lot better and make living conditions better for our employees if they could live closer to Aspen somewhere.
That's the nutshell, thanks. That's the letter I was referring to. And there's more detail, we can go into that at the next meeting, I guess.
Lowering my hand.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Tori, would you like a motion to adjourn?
I would.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for adjournment. Any further discussion? This one we can do just with an aye. All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you, guys.
Opposed?
Good discussion. For indulging me, everyone.
Thanks.